To all of our panelists and attendees, thank you for joining us for this end of year review and reflection for the holidays. For people who are watching a recorded version of this, thank you as well for the support that you've given us. This is really a private Zoom call that we're doing just for board members, donors, and supporters of In Defense of Christians. And we wanted to really just express our deepest gratitude to all of you for the support that you've given our organization, as well as provide you with an update on the work that we've done this year in a bit of detail, as well as have some of the leading experts in the field of advocacy for international religious freedom, as well as awareness spreading amongst Americans to stand with the persecuted Christian communities of the Middle East and across the globe. My name is Stephen Howard. I'm IDC's National Outreach Director. We have a number of great panelists that you'll be hearing from today and that we'll have speaking. We have the President of In Defense of Christians, Tawfiq Baklini, on the call. We have my wonderful colleague, Sarah Basile, on the call. We have an outstanding panel of experts as well who are going to be speaking. We have Richard Gazelle, who is a senior advisor with IDC, Robert Nicholson with the Philos Project, Andy Zemenides with the Hellenic American Leadership Council, and Mar Abba Royal from the Assyrian Church of the East Diocese of California. Our call today will last just about an hour, and the way it will flow is that we'll have IDC's president, Tawfiq, offer an introductory message of what we've done this year. Then I will go through in a bit more detail some of our accomplishments and activities. Then we'll transition to a panel with our experts, and that will provide an opportunity for attendees on the call to ask questions and hear their thoughts on issues relating to our advocacy. And then we'll conclude with a special reflection on Advent and Christmas from the bishop, and he will close us out in prayer. So again, we cannot be more grateful to everyone for joining us and for your support this year. And I will turn it over to IDC's president, Tawfiq Baklini.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank each and every one of you, especially our partners on this. And we've had a great year this year. And without your support, we couldn't have done as good as we did. A lot has happened since the beginning of the year, and in our troubled area, the whole region, from Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Turkey, of course, Nigeria, and Egypt, as well as many other places that we're working on. So we've had the chance to write several op-eds on the situations in the region, and the latest one was a great success that 2 days ago was published, an article that I wrote with His Eminence Cardinal Dolan, and it was published in the Wall Street Journal. That was a great article. So other than that, we had success in many of the things that we've worked on, especially when it came to aid for the Christians in the Middle East, aid for Christian organizations in specifically in Lebanon for the first time. And the latest resolution, Stephen will go over all the resolutions that what we've accomplished. The latest one to continue support, aid support for the Christians of Iraq and Syria. It's a resolution that passed unanimously in Congress, and we have a few hours that we're still working on. So I'll leave it up to Stephen. Thank you again. Have a great Christmas, and thank you for our partners that have been great support to us. Here I would bring up the Philos project, as well as ANCA and the Hellenic leaders. So I want to thank you all. And Stephen, please, if you can go over the details of accomplishments of this year, that would be great. Have a great Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Tawfiq. Well, this has been a really, this has been one of the craziest years, obviously, for IDC for many different reasons. But even if we take COVID out of the equation, there's been a lot of work that we've been up to, and I'm really excited to share what we've accomplished this year and what we've been working on. On the legislative side, as Tawfiq mentioned, we had a resolution passed the House of Representatives unanimously, House Resolution 1062, which is a resolution on U.S.-Iraq bilateral relations. And what was really awesome about this is that this resolution reaffirmed the genocide recognition against Christians, Yazidis, and other groups that was committed by ISIS. It had called on, it calls on the administration to continue providing humanitarian assistance. And that bill was actually, that resolution was introduced by Congressman Colin Allred of Texas, and he's actually an IDC congressional champion from 2019. So we were incredibly blessed and fortunate to have Vice President Pence announce the aid that was given at our summit in 2017. And we are really encouraged to see that in a Democratic representatives, that support for that assistance was reaffirmed. We find that really encouraging. I also wanted to share that Hres 512, which is a resolution calling for the global repeal of blasphemy, heresy, and apostasy laws passed Congress, which we found really encouraging. Congressman Jamie Raskin, who introduced the resolution, actually spoke about its importance at our digital summit back in September. And he's been a longtime supporter and ally of the organization. We've also seen a lot of successes when it comes to the executive branch this year. We work a lot with the executive branch, with the White House, with the State Department, with USAID. In particular, we're really proud President Trump's executive order on international religious freedom, which the president signed this past summer, does a lot of important work in terms of improving the executive branch's engagement on the subject. It includes things such as a fund actually that can go, so we can actually send dollars really to global hotspots of persecution. It also actually essentially mandates the training of anyone who works in an American embassy to be literate and familiar with international religious freedom. And it really impresses upon our diplomats and our State Department staff in foreign countries to look at this more seriously and to prioritize it further. We also were really pleased, in the first part of the year, Turkey really got away with much more than it should have as it relates to Christian persecution. And there's frankly a long way to go when it comes to holding Turkey accountable for its actions. We put a lot of pressure on the Trump administration on Turkey, and recently we're starting to see it pay off. On Monday, we saw that Turkey was sanctioned under CAATSA sanctions, which is countering America's adversaries through Sanctions Act. So they were sanctioned for purchasing a Russian S-400 missile defense system. We were really encouraged about that. We also were encouraged to see Secretary Pompeo travel to Turkey recently, and he didn't meet with a single government official. He specifically went and met with the Christian community, and that was really meant to send a signal to the Turkish government that the U.S. is not messing around when it comes to our care for international religious freedom. We also were really pleased, as we're in this period of political transition. We also met with senior level staff from the Biden campaign and briefed them on the issue of Christian persecution, as well as the dynamic in each of the countries in the Middle East that we work on. So we're looking forward just to continuing to brief them, to spread awareness, so that they can continue this important work. This was also really a huge year in terms of messaging for IDC. And really, we did a lot this year when it has come to really changing the media narrative on Christian persecution. We've hosted a large amount of policy and press briefings this year, including calling for stronger U.S. accountability toward Turkey. We've called for U.S. to assist Armenian Christians in Artsakh. Obviously, I've been working very vigorously on calling for a strong U.S. response to the crisis in Lebanon. And we've done a number of other issues that we've highlighted. We've called for the U.S. to do a better job assisting Christians in places like Egypt, Iraq, Nigeria, other global hotspots of persecution. We've also got some of the best experts in the U.S. To speak at our events and to give testimony to the work that we do. People such as Samuel Tedros of the Hudson Institute, Michael Rubin of the American Enterprise Institute, Nadine Manza of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. We've had Kino Gabriel with the SDF, Ambassador Ed Gabriel has spoken, Dr. Amy Austin Holmes of the Wilson Center, Council on Foreign Relations. The list goes on, but we've really had the opportunity to grow and feature some of the leading foreign policy voices in the country. And we've gotten them to focus their scholarship and their expertise on Christians, which has been really encouraging. And we've done just a remarkable job in really helping more Americans understand what our communities in the Middle East and Africa are going through. We also have done a remarkable job of engaging with our lawmakers. We have been very active legislatively this year. At our 2020 summit back in September, we had over 13 members of Congress speak, both Democrats and Republicans. And really, I mean, I think this is a first. I believe we had 3 U.S. senators speak. We had Senator Chris Van Hollen, Senator James Lankford, and Senator Marsha Blackburn speak. We also had 2 rising political stars speak, Congressman Dan Crenshaw and Congressman Ro Khanna, 2 young, very charismatic members of Congress who many would say have a very bright political future. So we're happy to engage with them. We also had remarks from USAID Acting Administrator John Marsa, and in fact did a separate webinar call with him and his team entirely. So we've just been really blessed that the work that we've done with Congress has got to the attention of our lawmakers. In fact, just yesterday we did a call with outgoing House Foreign Affairs Committee Chair Elliot Engel. We gave him a Congressional Champion Award because he's been a supporter for years, and had a fairly detailed and in-depth conversation on U.S. policy as it relates to Lebanon with one of the most influential lawmakers in U.S. foreign policy. So really the engagement has been on point, and it's been extremely strong, and we could not be more grateful for that. And last but not least, people have been telling us for years, you need to be, you shouldn't be just doing, religious media or Christian media. We love Christian media, but people have been telling us you need to get your message out there to the mainstream American public. And we've really done a good job with that this year. As Tawfiq had mentioned, he and Cardinal Dolan were just published in the Wall Street Journal. We've also been quoted and have written original content for publications such as The Hill, National Interest, Middle Eastern Eye, and the New York Post. So our message is getting out there. It is capturing the attention of the mainstream public, and that's something that we're going to continue. With that being said, with those reflections in sight, now we're actually going to transition over to our panel now, just for reflection on that. Again, the work that we do would not be possible with partner organizations, with allies like we have on our panel. So we're actually going to transition now just to a short conversation with Richard Gazelle, Robert Nicholson, and Andy Zemenides. And in particular, I just want people on the call to know that for the first 15, 20 minutes here, we will have our panelists speaking. But I want to invite everyone to ask questions, because we have time set aside in this call for our panelists to answer your questions. And I would much rather they, in fact, answer your questions than mine, but I'm happy to help get them started and provide some context for a good, engaging conversation. So without further ado, I'm actually going to reach out to Rich for my first question, which is just a simple reflection. When you look at what IDC's done this year, what really sticks out to you? What are your reflections on it? And furthermore, what are you really looking forward to accomplishing with IDC moving forward in 2021? Rich, can you kindly unmute yourself?
There we go. Well, thank you, Stephen, for the question. I appreciate that. looking back into 2020, this is actually the first year that I have been an active member of IDC. I've been a supporter for many years, 7 years to be exact. But 2020 is what drew me in closer to become involved with IDC. And in that short period of time, I quickly noticed one thing that really struck me is the level to which we cooperate with our friends and partner organizations. And that's demonstrated perfectly in this call today with our Hellenic friends from the Hellenic Leaders Council, as well as from the Fearless Project, and many others who maybe can't be with us today, but certainly walk with us every step of the way. So that's obviously critical to our mission, in the past and going forward, certainly. As you mentioned, our past work in 2020 was marked by, pressure on Turkey, support for Lebanon, and accountability for a plethora of other countries, including Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, Egypt, and so on. Looking forward into 2020, I hope to continue on that path, giving attention to these countries, particularly Turkey, of course, and particularly Lebanon, because we know, Lebanon is the last free bastion of Christianity in the Middle East, empowered by a democratic state. And if the state of affairs continue in Lebanon, unfortunately, the demographics stand to shift considerably, causing Christians to move west and leave the country. And, we all understand Lebanon is a political weather vane in the Middle East. And how goes Lebanon in terms of Christianity, so goes the other Christian communities from Lebanon in the west to Armenia in the east. So it's incredibly important. You mentioned our work and our involvement with the new administration, the soon-to-be Biden administration. So far, relations have been great between IDC and the Biden team. We hope to continue that relationship either shortly before inauguration or soon after they enter the White House. We know the soon-to-be President Biden and soon-to-be Secretary of State Tony Blinken have demonstrated a very sober position on Turkey, and we hope to work with their new State Department to realize and bring to fruition some of these policies. So looking ahead, I think we need to continue doing the great things we've been doing, but flexing a little bit to I guess, accommodate the new political reality in DC. But stepping back just a bit and looking at IDC from a wider perspective, I truly believe sky is the limit for this organization. There's incredible growth potential in terms of organizationally, in terms of our mission, our range of reach, as you mentioned, our breaking new ground in terms of media and so on, and certainly our base of support. Very promising looking forward, and I look forward to becoming more involved in a full-time capacity with IDC come 2021. So thanks for having me today, and I look forward to hearing from our friends.
Well, thank you, Rich. It's been a pleasure working with you more closely this year. I now wanted to turn over to Robert Nicholson. Rob, I know you've written a number of articles this year, and what I've really taken from some of your analysis is that you've been complimentary of certain U.S. government initiatives, such as the Abraham Accords. However, you've also been critical. You've also articulated that there's room for improvement. So when you look back on the year 2020, I would be interested, and I think it'd be helpful just for our conversation for you to share some of your reflections on accomplishments for Middle Eastern Christians that our organizations have been able to advocate for, and as well as, what are your recommendations for what our movement can do to better assist Middle Eastern Christians in 2021?
Well, thank you, Stephen and Tawfiq and the whole IDC team. I want to answer that question. It's a good question, but I do want to just say what I say often, and that is thank you to you guys. It's what IDC does there in DC is, I think, absolutely crucial for this movement. And it really serves, in addition to all of the specific things you guys do, there's the kind of the meta function that you serve, which is to be kind of the nexus that we need, right? I mean, you guys are there, you're working with us, you're working with American Hellenic Council and the Hellenic American leaders and the Maronites and the Assyrians, and just really giving, being the hub for the whole thing. And I don't think the movement would hang together if it weren't for you guys. So really huge kudos to you. And I think, one thing in 2021 or 2020 that I noticed was just what you both said, Stephen, you and Rich, that IDC has grown, and I think its influence has grown with it. I just opening Twitter the other day and seeing Tawfiq's article with Cardinal Dolan, in a major newspaper, it just, made my week. I was very happy to see that. 2020, there are silver linings in 2020. They can be hard to find. I do think one of the things you mentioned was one of those, this thing that everyone calls the Abraham Accords, which is essentially it seems like a cascading series of peace deals between various Arab countries and Israel. And of course, that adds to other peace deals that have existed since as early as the 70s. And while not necessarily of direct benefit to the Christians of the region, at least not yet, I do think that the basic idea of the Abraham Accords, which is that different people from different religions who have different positions on different things can coexist, is, when you sort of take a step back and look at the region as a whole, a very important and promising development that I think will grow in 2021. And paired with that story, the Abraham Accords, which is usually framed as kind of Arab-Israeli cooperation, you have a similar movement taking place in the Eastern Mediterranean. Andy would be able to talk more about it than I can, but Greece and Cyprus strengthening relations with Egypt, also Israel, Lebanon. There was an interesting tie-in between the two things when Greece made some, strengthened its relations with the UAE just last month or two. And so you see that there is this, Christians, Jews, Muslims across the region saying, you know what, we're not the same, and we don't agree on everything, but we're going to agree not to be hostile to one another. That from a bird's eye view is promising. But these countries are hardly perfect. And as I said, these deals have not yet directly benefited Christians, maybe Greece being the one exception. So I do think that there's a huge need to leverage these peace deals going into 2021 to achieve, positive outcomes for the people that no one's thinking about, in which in most cases means the Christians. There have been, a bunch of person-sized accomplishments in addition to the geostrategic developments. At Philos, we did a lot actually in 2020. We did one of the questions we've been asked often is about the Palestinian Christian community and why the numbers are plummeting. So we released a survey with a big Palestinian polling firm on exactly that question. I won't get into it here, but very illuminating, I think, not just for the Palestinian situation, but also for Christians around the region. We ramped up our, education for Christian leaders in the West Bank and in Israel proper. I think we're funding now 4 Palestinians university education, 3 of them from Gaza. We're funding an Armenian guy, his education. We raised money for schools in northern Iraq. We got money for Beirut. We helped a kid in our network who has brain cancer. And each of these itself was just an amazing story. And you see these stories, right? It's sort of one by one. But, I'm not going to lie and say that 2020 was one that gave me much optimism. Obviously, we watched what happened to Lebanon, this kind of slow and very painful to watch collapse or decline. We saw, I think for me, the lowest moment was just here a month ago with what happened in Artsakh. For 6 weeks, Armenian Christians at war, and most of the world and certainly most of America just really not caring that much. And I think even just as administrations changed, knowing that there were amazing things done over the last 4 years. There's Christians are no doubt worse off as a whole than they were 4 years ago. So there's a lot of sobriety, I think, on my part. I think there was a great article that Tawfiq published in Providence magazine called something like save Lebanon and help Turkey, or help Turkey, fight Turkey, which he said are that should be the two pillars for the new administration in the region. I think very much so, and including maintaining pressure on Iran. I think, as I said, leveraging these new alliances for Christians. And then lastly, just one thing, and I'll stop, is, the Artsakh War, I think, revealed to me the limits of government power. And we all spend a lot of time, walking the halls of Congress and doing events in DC and all of that. And no doubt IDC is leading the way, but it just became clear to me that even when, we're fighting hard to get those, executive decisions made for Christians, oftentimes, in fact, maybe most times, nothing really happens, right? And there's good reasons for that, right? All kinds of interests and strategic concerns. But I think it revealed to me that there is a huge need for private action in this space, private investment, trying to work, empower the Christians, strengthen the Christians beneath the political level, because it's only in that way that I think these communities can really be sustainable. So that's a lot, but I think those are the things I'm thinking about going to 2021.
Thank you very much, Robert. We've always appreciated your thoughts and analysis on these issues. We often, for everyone watching the call, we often share Robert's articles when he does write, because your takes are much appreciated. I want to remind people watching the call as well that please feel free and drop your questions into the chat, even as we're talking now. That way, when we do transition to the Q&A, there won't be any pauses or delays. So lastly, I wanted to pivot to our third panelist, Endi Zimenides. And Endi, on Monday, we saw that Turkey was sanctioned under CAATSA sanctions. We saw the Secretary of State announce that. My question is, what significance do these sanctions have? And just in general, what are the next steps that the U.S. can take to confront Erdogan?
Thank you, Stephen and Tawfiq and all my friends In Defense of Christians. It is really, I want to echo what Robert said, you really are a glue of bringing people together. One of my favorite quotes is, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." And I think we should not just let that be a passive wait for it to bend. I think together we jump on that arc, we bend it, and that's what we've done. When you're talking about CAATSA, or the Countering American Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, these sanctions were in specific response to one move by Turkey, which was buying the Russian S-400s. It's something that they ordered, back at the beginning of the Trump administration. It's been a long haul to try to hold them accountable. But I'd like to, some of our viewers may not know this, but in the last Congress, we teamed with IDC and ANCA to start a sanctioned Turkey effort. We started with fighting the transfer of F-35 jets. We succeeded. Turkey got kicked out of the F-35 program. In fact, the few jets that were legally transferred to Turkey this year in the NDAA were taken back and given, Turkey never got possession of them, but they were taken back and given to the United States Air Force. And we still thought, and they still didn't change their behavior. We continued the sanctioned Turkey movement. And as Stephen pointed out, this Monday, the US and Secretary Pompeo, to whom President Trump had delegated authority, imposed sanctions on Turkey's main defense industry body and its officers, which will basically cut it off from US exports, US licenses, even European weapons that have US components. Now, this doesn't get to all of Turkey's bad behavior, but it's critical. It's very important because for the first time in a long time, the US has shown that the days of appeasing or accommodating or making an excuse and giving more time to Turkey, those days are over. There's a lot more that needs to be done, especially on the protection of Christianity in Turkey, and beyond, and what Turkey is doing to Christians in Artsakh. But while we're really happy about the sanctions, and we're encouraged that the U.S. is going to have a proper policy on that, we can't forget that this summer, Turkey, even though we raised an outroar and the whole world seemed outraged, Turkey converted Hagia Sophia, a shared symbol of all our world heritage, but obviously one of the most significant sites in Christianity, converted it into a mosque. And that Hagia Sophia moment passed. The administration did nothing about it. And, an agenda item that we shared with In Defense of Christians, which will continue into the next administration, is to finally, just like the US finally spoke truth to power in Turkey with regard to the S-400s, to speak truth when it comes to the status of Christianity in Turkey. Turkey must be labeled a country of particular concern. It is one of the worst religious rights violators in the world. And this goes to both our values and our interests. It is our values. Religious freedom is really the canary in the coal mine. When everybody was talking about, Turkey being this example of a potential modern Islamic democracy, we knew that it was a facade. When Christians didn't have religious freedom, we knew that it was only a matter of time before they got to journalists and political appointments. And that's exactly where we are. Whether it's Turkey or Lebanon or elsewhere, whenever Christians, where the Christian population has been repressed or effectively wiped out, that state has become more dangerous in the Middle East. And that's the next step. And I think that's something that the Biden administration, we're going to work with IDC and Philos and Ankara to really make that a front burner issue. That Turkey needs to be called out for it. We know, when it comes to Christianity in Turkey, we know that the vice president was the first vice president ever, or the president-elect was the first vice president ever that went to the ecumenical patriarchate. He had a statement on Hagia Sophia. His first state dinner as vice president, he hosted ecumenical patriarch Bartholomew at the vice president's residence. We have to go beyond the rhetoric and let Turkey know, as we did today, that there are consequences for these outrages.
Absolutely, Andy. And while the circumstances that have drawn us to work closer together this year are unfortunate, I will say that it's been one of the highlights for sure of my experience at IDC, working with you and with Aram and with Robert. It's really been a lot of fun fighting in the trenches with you all. So we look forward to continuing that good fight in 2021. I've had a couple of questions come in, and I'll be directing them to our panelists now. First one I'm actually going to direct to Rich, as well as to Robert, actually, because I know that Robert was just in Egypt. But one of our attendees is asking about the status of advocacy on Egypt. And in particular, what are some challenges and next steps under Biden's administration? Rich, would you care to weigh in first? And please kindly unmute yourself.
There we go. I figured I'd learn the second time, but I guess I didn't. Thank you for the question. It's a great question. For the past year, and over a year, in fact, IDC has been closely focusing on the status of the Copts in Egypt, particularly with two issues mainly. House Resolution 49, which gently and delicately holds Egypt accountable for its treatment of Copts, particularly trying to end the culture of impunity when it comes to Copts and crimes against the Coptic communities in Egypt. It also acknowledges Egypt's partnership, however, and encourages Egyptian partnership in terms of anti-terror efforts and that sort of thing. But it does have some pretty strong and unambiguous language with regard to their need to protect Copts. So IDC has been working strongly behind House Resolution 49. Unfortunately, it met some political roadblocks along the way, but IDC stayed behind it. And we look forward to continuing our efforts come the new Congress, the 117th Congress, whatever it takes, we will continue that fight. Also, with regard to Egypt and the Copts particularly, is the case of Rami Kamel, which IDC again has been strongly behind. Rami Kamel, as you may be familiar with, given the fact that you asked the question, you may be familiar with his case. He's a young activist in Egypt. He's a Coptic Christian who has essentially dedicated his life to the protection of the Coptic community and the status of the Coptic community in Egypt. He was thrown in prison over a year ago now. It's been about 13 months, I believe. He's been in prison on trumped up charges. In fact, he hasn't even been notified of what these charges specifically are, which is a huge violation of certainly American tradition of due process, but arguably any legal tradition around the world. If you're going to be in prison, certainly for over a year, you need to be notified of what these charges are. My understanding is he has medical problems in this age of COVID-19. Being in a cold prison cell doesn't bode too well. So we've been working forcefully on his case. We provided one-pagers that detail his case to various figures in DC, including Pastor Brunson, who himself is no stranger to being falsely or unjustly thrown in prison. In his case, it was Turkey. As luck would have it, or as by the grace of God, frankly, Pastor Brunson was able to get that information to the Vice President, Mike Pence, in a conversation about religious liberty. And so he delivered it to the Vice President, so it got on the radar of the Vice President. Again, nothing much has happened in terms of tangible movement in the case of Rami Kamel, but it's something that we continue and will continue to remain very vigilant on in the coming days, in the coming months. So,
Thank you, Rich. Robert, will you? I know that you recently have traveled to Egypt with the Philos Project.
Yes, yeah, Egypt is really such a difficult case, and the difficulty is highlighted, the most by the fact that it's the largest number of Christians in the region, as we all know. So, you have this impulse to, Egypt should be a major priority, and one puts it there, but then one is confronted with the difficult nature of the situation. It's just such a different context compared to Lebanon or Armenia, where Christians, there's a longer tradition of maybe Christian freedom, where populations are more concentrated. In Egypt, you have the Coptic population just dispersed all over, right? Intermixed in every part of the country, Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt. The paradox is exacerbated by the fact that Sisi is both a friend and not a friend, right? He's better than some, but worse than others. And so there's this sort of constant dance in terms of advocacy of how much do you push? Could you make it actually worse? I know that when I led a trip, I led a fact-finding trip, some journalists and other kind of Christian leaders. There was, people left the trip feeling both, positive and very negative at the same time. And I think it's been reflected in our struggles as the Philos Project in terms of figuring out, what kind of advocacy could we do in this space. You guys are you take the lead there in DC. We always think of the advocacy that we do as what we call incarnational advocacy, right? We try to embody it in, experiences on the ground and training for local leaders. One idea that I've had lately, it could go nowhere, but it's something I'm trying out and talking to people about, is working at the sub-government level, specifically in Armenia, where so much of the problems between Christians and Muslims are, they happen despite the fact that the regime seems committed to trying to stop them. And so, one question I have is, recognizing that many of these situations are decided by these local reconciliation councils, which are, conducted according to Islamic law. Are there other reconciliation models under Islamic law that could be brought to bear? So I've reached out to a few Islamic jurists, just again, kind of a harebrained idea, but wondering if maybe there's a way to work in Armenia with local Muslims and Christians to develop something that will lead to more just outcomes more often. Now, it's hardly a fix-all or any kind of silver bullet, but I feel like I'm at the stage on Egypt where I realize that the regime either cannot or will not impose its will to get better outcomes for these Christians. And so I'm sort of thinking of what are some non-governmental alternatives that are more than just these kind of bland declarations and sort of statements that we sometimes see. So we'll see. We're going to try some things out in 2021. No promises, but that's kind of where my attention has been on Egypt lately.
And thank you for sharing that, Robert. And it is a very difficult country. And I even saw one writer for Al Monitor commenting that just because Sisi says something at the presidential level, it doesn't necessarily trickle down to what someone called the quote unquote deep state. And so how do you influence that kind of institutional change? It is a challenge for sure. I wanted to actually ask another question specifically to Andy, in that obviously the primary sort of work that your organization does is you do a lot of work, I know, on Greece as well as Cyprus. So I would love to hear an update just from you on accomplishments as it relates to U.S. policy regarding these two countries this year, as well as goals, objectives that you have for ways that U.S. can strengthen their relationship with these two countries in 2021.
I'm going to answer it by referring to the framework that Robert described before. It used to be, if you talked about 10 years ago, U.S. policy on Greece and Cyprus, it was bilateral. It was basically bilateral policy, right? Greece, U.S., or the Greco-Turkish relationship, Cyprus, Turkey. We have, and this affects all our work. We have the Eastern Mediterranean taking shape as a political region for the first time in U.S. Diplomatic history, right? Just think about how poorly we are kind of bureaucratically to deal with it, poorly set up we are. In the State Department, you have a bureau that deals with the Levant, a bureau that deals with Southeast Europe. In congressional subcommittees, right, you have a Europe subcommittee. So Greece may be on the same agenda as Finland, but not Lebanon, right? And Lebanon will be think about this, Cyprus and Lebanon are a speedboat right away, but they could be on vastly different agendas, where Cyprus is being considered with Iceland and Finland, and Lebanon is with Yemen and Ethiopia, right? So I think one of the greatest successes in this past Congress was the passage of the Eastern Mediterranean Security and Energy Partnership Act, which was authored in the Senate by Senators Bob Menendez and Marco Rubio, and in the House by Congressman Gus Bilirakis, Congressman Ted Deutsch, and Congressman David Cicilline. They had widespread bipartisan and bicameral support, but really is directing the U.S. to develop a strategy around those positive trends that Robert pointed out. It started 10 years ago with the trilateral, Greece, Cyprus, and Israel, which many people just, they a little bit dismiss that as kind of a bounce back relationship vis-a-vis Turkey. But you saw it playing out differently in the region, right? Cyprus became a tremendous go-between between Israel and Lebanon, between Israel and Egypt, Israel and Jordan. And then you started seeing additional trilaterals, right? There was Greece, Cyprus, Israel, then there was Greece, Cyprus, Egypt. There was Greece, Cyprus, Jordan. There was Greece, Cyprus, Lebanon. So Greece and Cyprus became kind of that focal point where players who usually were not talking with each other now are talking to each other. And it culminated, years ago I wrote a report saying, hey, remember the European Union came together around sources of energy. The first European body was the steel and coal community. Could natural gas play the role of steel and coal in the 21st century? And we asked that question thinking, man, it may be decades before we see it, but over the last 2 years, we've seen a rapid coalescing around a new multilateral body called the Eastern Mediterranean Natural Gas Forum, headquartered in Cairo. But if any of us here were told 10 years ago that there would be a table out at which the Egyptians and the Greeks, the Cypriots, the Israelis, the Jordanians, the Palestinians, the French, the Italians were all sitting around, we may have scoffed at it, but that's exactly what happened. And it's something creating, it's meant to start creating the rule of law. It may even help create progress in the subject we were just talking about in Egypt. If Egypt starts becoming economically more liberalized, gets committed to the rule of law, it'll have a greater effect in Egyptian society. And it also affects countries like Lebanon and Turkey. Something that probably a lot of people, not enough people paid attention to. The East Med Gas Forum did a joint communique that told Lebanon and Turkey, you're welcome to join, but you got to play by the rule of law. You got to play by the rules that we all come up with together, and not by the rules that AKP or Hezbollah or the Muslim Brotherhood want to promote. So this is going to be a real challenge for the Biden administration, or a real opportunity, because when they left office, when Jake Sullivan and Tony Blinken and President-elect Biden left the Obama administration, the Eastern Mediterranean had not coalesced like this. It has. Congress has given it a tool, a tremendous tool in the East Med Act to take advantage of it in the U.S. to help provide the cover for the East Med to coalesce the way the U.S. decades ago provided the cover for the EU to coalesce. And I think there's all kinds of phenomenal opportunities geopolitically, for human rights, and for the rule of law.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Andy. And obviously, IDC is a strong support of Greece and Cyprus and the work that you all do there, as they are also ancient and historic Christian countries. There was a second question I had, and just for purposes of time, it'll be the final question of our Q&A. And so I wanted to position it to Rich. It's a bit of a complicated question, but Rich, if you wouldn't mind providing just maybe a brief answer. The question is, when you look at what is going on in Lebanon and Armenia right now, is it proper to really define the crises in those countries as religious, or is it better to classify them as economic, or is it both, or is it neither? Would you care to share some thoughts on this?
Thank you. No, that's a great question. Like anything in this world, nothing is binary. So I would say it's a combination of both. There's certainly an economic element to it, but I would say by and large, both in terms of Lebanon and in terms of Armenia, it's ideological at its foundation. Looking at Armenia, I mean, Turkey has a long-standing animus toward Armenia, and that's really what undergirds their support for Azerbaijan. There is an economic element. There is the Caspian access. There is energy issues at stake, but it's ideological. Looking at Lebanon, it's endemic corruption. The economic aspect of it is really a result of individual greed and corruption. Hezbollah is not so interested in money, only to the extent that it's a means to an end. Hezbollah's single mission is to perpetuate and maintain the Islamic Revolution of Iran, and to create satellite states and franchises, and that's precisely what they're doing. Money is incidental, but they are undergirded by their ideology.
Thank you for that, Rich. Well said. And at this point of our
Stephen, can I add to that?
Yes, absolutely.
I think when you look at it, and I think one of the mistakes we make with Turkey is we look at their, what they just did in Artsakh, or their involvement in Lebanon or Libya, and we look at all that as separate, and it's not separate. Right? Turkey used to be celebrated in Washington, D.C. falsely as a country that had zero problems with neighbors' foreign policy, which was never true, ever. But now Turkey has zero neighbors without which it does have problems, right? So you look at it, and this is a challenge, again, not only for Christians in the Middle East, for Greece, for Cyprus, for Kurds, for Armenians, for Israel, but for the U.S. for U.S. security. Turkey is a quintessential. Our security and values have to go hand in hand. We sacrificed our values for a long time for a false sense of security with Turkey, and we saw that it didn't play out. And right now, Turkey looks at the region, the greater region, from the Caucasus to the Middle East to the Eastern Mediterranean, and they act very much like China. If you take the Eastern Mediterranean and its gunboat diplomacy right now in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Aegean, it's exactly what China's doing in the South China Sea. You look what they do to religious minorities, it's exactly what China is doing to the Uyghurs. There is no border which Turkey looks at itself, it looks at any country bordering it as a partner, as an ally, but more as a subordinate. So we shouldn't look at just the gas. Some people think the dispute with Greece and Cyprus is about gas. It's not about gas. It's really not about gas. The gas was the catalyst for the East Med to come together, and Turkey doesn't like that the East Med is coming together without its permission. Turkey, and as Stephen can tell you, every time we work together with IDC and ANCA, the Turks attack us. We were jointly called enemies of the state. And today, this week after the sanctions, right, President Erdogan said the American government has to stop listening to Greek, Armenian, and Christian lobbies. Well, I guess who are they referring to, right? So Turkey wants to be the 800-pound gorilla in this state. Nobody wants to say, we don't want Turkey for a permanent enemy. We want that hope of Turkey turning into a modern democracy, one that respects its religious minorities and treats them as full citizens. We all want that. We just want Washington to stop playing the charade that, yes, Turkey's coming to the West. Give them a break on recognition of the Armenian genocide. Give them a break on giving full religious freedom to Christians in Turkey. Give them a break on Turkey, on Cyprus and the Aegean. No more breaks, no more blank checks. If Turkey wants to be allied, if it wants to be a NATO country, if it wants to be have a free trade agreement with the United States, if it wants to be an EU candidate member, this is the behavior that it has to comply with.
Well said, Andy. And IDC has always been in agreement with that sense that American allies should share American values. And before we transition to Tamar Awa's reflection and prayer, I wanted to give Robert a chance just to weigh in on Turkey.
Well, I think everything that was just said, 100%. I mean, there's one of the things that I realized during this Artsakh war, it wasn't a new realization, but I think it was deepened, was just how strong the Turkish lobby is. And the Azeri lobby also was kind of tag teaming along, just the way that the story was playing out in media, social media. I mean, we've all felt the pressures, as Andy said, in DC from these kind of unseen forces. So I'm very interested in that lobby, and been trying to talk to some people who understand more. This is something that some of you have been dealing with for a very long time, so I don't think it's going to be solved tomorrow. But I think that if we are going to really get upstream of some of these things, right, this narrative that Andy just laid out that's really been entrenched in the State Department for decades, I think we have to really think about how we confront that lobby, how we engage with it, how you can dismantle it. In the meantime, one of the things we're doing is trying to, a lot of what we do is education and leadership training. So the fact that Americans were basically silent during that war, and just for so many of these other things that we're dealing with, just reminded me how much education needs to be done. So we're planning some trips, COVID permitting, to Armenia, hopefully Artsakh in 2021, young leaders, some more established people. And, it's only one subset of this Turkey story, right, which is sort of like an octopus over there in the region. But we think that, telling a better story from the ground that undermines this narrative, this false narrative, is really, crucial if we ever hope to have the national will to begin to confront Turkey at the diplomatic level. Right now, I don't think enough Americans understand the threat that Turkey poses, and the American government therefore has a lot of room to, make these more transactional decisions, with Turkey. So I think those would be the things that I'm thinking about right now.
Thank you. No, very exciting plans, and we're ready. We have a strong coalition against Erdogan and the norms that he breaks, and the human rights violations of Turkey, and as well as his very dangerous foreign policies. So we're ready to get to work in 2021. And something when people ask me, what does IDC have planned for 2021? I simply just say, save Lebanon, stop Turkey. There's a lot more in there, but that's a very easy way of summarizing it. So at this point, I wanted to transition to Mar Awa Royale, who has a special reflection for us, as well as a prayer. He's bishop of the Assyrian Church of the East Diocese of California. So Mar Awa, please kindly unmute yourself, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I appreciate the opportunity of being with all of you. By the way, how long do I have?
We are, 10
Just so I don't go overboard.
But just please, we're all ears, so we're not going to rush you at all. It's our privilege to listen.
They say that the average sermon during the patristic age was about an hour, but I'm going to spare you all of that. So, well, my greetings to all of you. Thank you for the invitation, Stephen, and all of your colleagues, and of course, I greet our president, Tawfiq, and all of the panelists. And it's a joy to be with all of you. I mean, personally, I learned quite a bit more of what I thought I knew about that region of the world, which concerns us all. And because we are IDC, or Defense of Christians, I think it's a good opportunity now as we close to sort of go back and reflect on what it means to be a Christian. There's a lot of advocacy that goes on. A lot of you are very much involved with that. But I think even before we get to that perspective, it's good to reconsider our own faith, and especially during these very difficult times for the whole world, not just the Middle East. The Middle East has known a very long history of persecution for the Christian communities there, but our whole world is suffering today. And the words from Scripture that come to mind are from St. Paul's second letter to the Corinthians, where he says, "Blessed be God, the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies, and the God of all consolation, who comforts us all in our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort those who are in any trouble with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God." And our comfort, of course, is the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, which we strive to live by and to uphold on a daily basis. I want to share a few words from one of our common fathers, so all of the churches that have been named and are involved with IDC, and that's St. Ephrem the Great, who is very prophetic in many ways, and he has beautiful hymns on the Nativity. I want to share one of them with you, and it's particular because it looks at the feast and the mystery of our Lord's incarnation in the Nativity from a perspective of, okay, we're suffering now, but let's look at the bright side. And so this particular hymn, it's hymn number 1 actually on the Nativity, has struck me very opportune for the present pandemic, the crisis, and everything else that's going on in the world. And St. Ephrem says this. He says, "In this night of reconcilement, let no man be angry or gloomy. In this night that stills all, none that threatens or disturbs. This night belongs to the sweet one. Bitter or harsh be in it none. And this night that is the meek one's, high or haughty be in it none. In this day of pardoning, let us not exact trespasses. In this day of gladness, let us not spread sadness. In this day so sweet, let us not be harsh. In this day of peaceful rest, let us not be wrathful in it. In this day when God came to sinners, let not the righteous be in his mind uplifted over the sinner. In this day in which there came the Lord of all unto the servants, let masters too condescend to their servants lovingly. And this day in which the rich became poor for our sakes, let the rich man become the poor man, make the poor man, share with him at his table. On this day to us came forth the gift, although we asked it not. Let us therefore bestow alms on them that cry and beg us. This is the day that opened for us a gate on high to our prayers. Let us open also gates to supplicants that have transgressed, and of us have asked forgiveness. Fixed in nature is the body, great or less it cannot become. But the will has such dominion that it can grow to any measure. Today the Godhead sealed itself upon the manhood, that so with the Godhead's stamp, manhood might be adorned. And I think these are very fitting for our troublesome times. I want to end with a prayer taken from the Vespers liturgy of the Assyrian Church of the East for the Feast of the Nativity. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, forever. Amen. Unto thee, O glorious Son, who was born and who saved our race from slavery to death, and who enlightened our hearts with the resplendent light of his knowledge, teaching us that we should only acknowledge him on account of the loftiness of his birth, and who made us worthy with the Magi and with the shepherds who came to worship him, that we might celebrate the feast of his birth with hymns of glory, and who demonstrated to us that we should acknowledge him and believe in him, for he himself is the omnipotent one who brings about all things by the indication of his will. Unto thee do we supplicate, request, and beg. Account us worthy to receive the prayers which are sent forth from us before the throne of thy majesty. And make us worthy to stand before thee with a pure heart, that we may minister to thee and exalt thee in the feasts of thy dispensation, O Lord of all, Father and Son and Holy Spirit, forever. Amen. And a blessed Christmas and a very hopeful new year to come. And let's pray that the Lord will bless 2021 with his abundant blessings.
Thank you very much, Marwa. That was very beautiful, and I think that sets us all in a good place spiritually moving forward. I wanted just to invite IDC's President Tawfiq, if you have any farewell message for us before we say goodbye.
I just want to thank everyone again, my friends on the call. And we're looking forward for 2021, a lot of work, a lot more work to be done. We have a great start with the new administration, with Tony Blinken and his staff, as well as Jake Sullivan and his staff. So looking forward for 2021. And Sayidna, we're looking for more and more prayers. We always need it. So thank you all. Have again Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And looking forward and working together as a team. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tawfiq.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you, Tawfiq, and a Merry Christmas to all of you.